Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I've got the pleasure of being joined by Gabe Eltaeb tonight. Gabe, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me here, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we just before we started recording, I learned that we born in the same place. That's how weird is that?
That's wild. Yeah, Greeley, Colorado. And if you read Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray's Jonah Hex, that is
Hmm.
DC Comics canon where Jonah Hex was born.
Oh,
So
very
there you
nice.
go. Greeley, Colorado,
Yeah.
back in the 1800s for Jonah Hex.
All right, so we got some comic book celebrities here in
Right?
one place. Well, Gabe, so I mean, kicking right off, people coming to this, I wanted to start kind of at the end, but you got a lot of great knowledge about the industry. You've worked in a lot of different places, worked on a ton of characters.
Right.
But the present is where I wanted to begin because you've got a campaign in a comic. So people who don't go wait through the entire interview, I want to make sure they're hitting this beginning. So tell us about what's going on right now.
Okay. Well, let me share my screen, but it's Truth, Justice, American Way. And David Williams, the great, he got hired at DC Comics when he was 17 and still in high school. He's in like his mid 50s now, so he's worked in this business since forever. David
Yeah.
Williams is a master illustrator, and we've got Gary Martin as the inker, and he's just fantastic too. He literally wrote that Dark Horse book about inking. That's who Gary Martin is. So
Yeah.
together, the three of us have about 90 years of experience working in comics, and we've decided to go independent and stuff, and we can get into that later. My move to go independent, but Truth, Justice, American Way is a return to what we both, all three of us, but really me and Dave talked about, feel is missing from mainstream entertainment and not just comics, where we
Hmm.
keep things more in the exciting, carefree. We stay away from like woke, forced diversity, and all that stuff, and we just respect art and the way that the logic of art works. When you build art, when you build stories, you don't fit in identity politics and all that stuff just to like pat yourself on the back that you're a hero, that you made up this character that was diverse. If people are diverse and it makes sense for the story, of course. But we just see that a lot. I mean, like I don't want to go into it because everyone's made a million videos, but look at the woke Lord of the Rings. I mean,
Sure.
the reaction is, maybe it's a minority of fans getting angry or whatever, but it just isn't good to disrespect the tradition of something, what it was built on. If you want to make stories like that, then make new ones. It's very simple. Prove to us that you're talented. Creators out there that want to change everything. You're just riding on the coattails of what was already popular and had a built-in fan base. It's obvious. That's self-evident. It's not up for debate. If these people had the skills they do have, or some claim to have, some don't have, whatever, then they would be able to fully make brand new characters that would invigorate and thrill people and inspire people. The tagline I've jumped on for mine is "Heroes You Can Believe in," and I want these books to inspire us. And you see, our lead female character, she's a Ethiopian Greek. She's half and half, and we didn't put her in there to be diverse. We put her in there because someone in David Williams' life when he was young was that and really inspired him. So it's an homage, and it makes sense for this character when you read the story. So we didn't take a character that was already Asian or that was already white or was already whatever and then turn them into this to show the world that we're heroes because we want to be diverse. I think a huge problem in entertainment is you have well-meaning people, I think, and they want to do all this inclusion stuff, but they're doing it in a ham-fisted way. They're not doing it with any skill or elegance. They're doing it, in my opinion, frankly, to be patted on the back and to be praised. It's coming from an ugly place. It's not benevolent
Mhm.
or loving. I think it's a pretty negative thing, to be honest with you. So
You
our
know,
book is refreshing, and it's just that the way you felt when you watched Goonies, the way you felt when you watched a Van Damme or Seagal movie, the way you felt watching Star Wars. You don't know if Han Solo's a Republican or a Democrat. Nobody cares. Nobody that shouldn't be in there. This calling half your audience racist and bigots. We won't do that in this. And I'm
sure.
more conservative, sure, than the average person in Hollywood. But my book, when you read it, it will not tell you you're trash because you're liberal or left wing or whatever. We won't do that. This is things that unite people. That's what I want to do. Stuff all about heroism and excitement. The stuff we all agree on that's just amazing. That heroism and overcoming all the obstacles in life is what the point is. So, we
Yeah.
want to bring people those thrills back.
So it's interesting. So you've said a bunch of things there, and thank you for that. I think what's interesting. You mentioned right at the start. You talked about Lord of the Rings and kind of the controversy surrounding it. The strange part about that, and maybe the sad part about that, I would think, is that the majority of people who are going to want to tune into Amazon and see this show and turn it on have no context. They're coming to it because they want to see orcs and elves and things fighting in Middle Earth. That's the only bias they're bringing to the show. And so this little war that kind of goes on Twitter, and it's we want to talk about your book, not Lord of the Rings, but that entire battle seems to be completely in opposition to 95% of the people who just want to click on the show, watch something, have some escapist entertainment. They don't care about any of that stuff. And it's weird that becomes the dominant part of the conversation. That is subtractive to the show.
I would disagree wholeheartedly. I think if you're an artist and you pay the price to be an artist, and if you have any idea how hard it is to be Tolkien, to be Jim Lee, to be me, to be anyone that has paid this price, there are a couple hundred of us that make a living making comics. And how dare you, not you, but how dare you, SJW, leftist writers, how dare you disrespect something someone else built and ride on their success so you can make your political point. So I'm sorry, but you're wrong about that. It is immoral to do that. You didn't build it, you didn't earn it, and you're not respecting it. You're using it to grandstand for your politics. You don't have the moral right to do it. The legal right, sure. You buy the rights to stuff. I could spray paint my Corvette, right? I don't have one, but I could spray paint my Corvette and you'd say I was an idiot for ruining it, but it's mine. I have the right to do it. Just because you can do something doesn't mean it's right. So no, the price paid by these authors and artists and all that to make Superman, to make Lord of the Rings, you don't have the right to do that. Show me your skill. Show me your skill and make your own thing instead of ruining Star Wars and all this. And the virtue signaling, the Church of Woke, it's all about self-worship. They insert gay people and black people, Mexican people like me, Arab people like me. They put us in there as a joke because what it really is they want to be praised because they are their own God. They want to say, look, everyone, like Tom Taylor's Nightwing. He has a 3-legged puppy. Come on. If you don't see that for what that ploy is, he's so nice and sensitive that he put that poor little dog in there. It's ridiculous. He doesn't care about those kind of, when you write like that, you don't care about black people when you make a black dwarf. That's not why you did it. You did it to show everyone how special you and wonderful and what a hero you are. So, and it's totally immoral to the arts. You don't do that to someone else.
So you say you disagree, but I think we're talking about two different things. My point here was that the people who are coming to watch the show, I mean, the people sitting on their couch, clicking on to watch this show, they're not coming to Lord of the Rings saying they want to see Republicans or Democrats or anything. They want to see fantasy. They came for the Lord of the Rings show.
Right.
And so this argument that happens where we get into all these other pieces to it, there's the audience just wants to watch fantasy. That's why they're at the show. This argument that comes up on social media is an argument that is annoying to them, quite frankly, because it's getting in the way of them watching the show. It's like there's something being produced. There's this whole messaging around Lord of the Rings and everything else that is, frankly, not giving the fans what they want because they just want to sit there and watch fantasy. They want to watch, in many cases, what they've come to expect with Tolkien. People can say anything they want about Tolkien's legacy and all these other pieces, but we've had decades now where people watch Tolkien for fantasy. That is what they know. But it has nothing to do with any political party or agenda. It has to do with, elves and dwarves, sword fighting, kind of mythology. And so to me, it's sad that you mix up all these contemporary 2020 things into that property, which flies right over the head, or not just flies over the head, they see it, but they're irritated by it. All they want to do is watch and escape a show. That was my point.
Right, but the politics is injected by the SJW writers first.
Yeah, it's injected by the creators.
It's a reaction. It's not coming up first. Like, oh, you don't like women in fantasy. No one had a problem with Princess Leia in the original trilogy. And she was spunky and tough. She wasn't some drip. She wasn't just some bimbo that couldn't do anything. She moved the plot along. She was shooting off the guards when they were jumping down the garbage chute in episode 4. She was a strong woman that didn't take any guff.
In sci-fi and fantasy for forever. I mean, you think about a lot of the shows in the 70s, from Aliens or Alien to Aliens to Star Wars to, there's strong female characters. Hell, even Indiana Jones. Marianne was a strong female character.
No one had a problem.
Yeah, well, yeah, nothing new there. And it does irritate me. And I'll tell you, as a comic store retailer, it frustrates me when people say things like, comic books used to be populated by terrible racists, and now we're making it better. It's like, hey, the 80s, an era I absolutely love, had really strong female characters.
Sure.
Storm and Captain Marvel both led the two top Marvel teams for years. And again, people bought it. Hell, people were buying a lot more comics then than today. So, I don't get that argument that things were bad and now we have to make them better. Things were fine.
Right. Yeah, I do think that, here's the thing about, I'm an artist and a writer, and an award-winning writer, actually. I know how to write. And when you write a story, one of the main things, everyone thinks they can write because everyone has good ideas. Ideas are not writing. Everyone has amazing story ideas. The execution of sitting there and writing and rewriting and editing and character arcs and setting things up and paying them off, that's the skill almost nobody has. I have it. Okay, I know how to write. I've done it for years. And here's the thing about this forced diversity that's terrible writing. It isn't just different, it breaks the rules of writing. In writing, there's a very simple principle, verisimilitude. The story has to agree with its own internal logic. Okay, so when you have I've used this example plenty. When you have Jon Snow fighting a dragon, he can escape on horseback or maybe on a magical Pegasus and fly away. What he can't escape in is a Mini Cooper, right? Even though those cars are real, he can't do that because it breaks the story. So when you have Poe Dameron and he's being humiliated and picked on by the purple-haired lady, the Admiral, I don't remember her name.
I didn't like that movie.
In the second movie, because the writing was feminist and anti-conservative, so it's anti-masculine, and it was. There's no debate. I hate to use this word, but they cucked Poe Dameron, humiliated him, called him a hotshot, told him all this stupid stuff, and he didn't get to be a hero. So not only was that politically outrageous, like left wing, it was bad writing because it breaks the logic of a story where we see a hero like Poe Dameron is supposed to have his character arc where he starts off as this character, he runs into trouble, and then he arcs into a new person, and he's the hero. This is Joseph Campbell's the hero with 1,000 faces. So no, it isn't just different when they have black dwarfs. It isn't just different when they change the Wheel of Time to all women and fighting. They're breaking the story. You can write stories about minorities. Again, I'm a minority. I'm not a white supremacist. I'm a minority. My dad's a first-generation immigrant. I signed the papers to be responsible for a French immigrant to move here. How many people have any of the viewers signed up to be responsible for legally? I don't have a problem with people who are diverse. I have a problem with bad writing with the political agenda. Again, when you go back to those 80s comics you said sold well, is Professor X a Republican or a Democrat? You can't tell. You can't tell. It's not in there.
And that, actually, that was my point exactly right there. Right. So again, people are coming to these forms of entertainment. They're not looking for a CNN lecture or a Fox News lecture in their entertainment. So again, to circle back to Lord of the Rings, we got to talk about your comic, not stupid Amazon Prime shows I'm not going to watch anyway. But anyway, the key here is, and this is where I think people get hung up on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and everything. They get into this battle, forgetting that the comic audience, the comic buying audience is fractional on Twitter. Very, very few people who are actually going and putting money and reading this stuff are on Twitter at all. But that majority audience is tuning out. Sales are down. They are going somewhere else. So why?
Okay, well, let's look at it this way. Star Wars is a phenomenon and it can print money, right? But they went leftist propaganda with it and it doesn't do as good. If they went back to the swashbuckling style of the 80s and 70s where there was no purple-haired lady, you think that was a coincidence, the purple hair? You think her telling the handsome male lead that he's an idiot and he doesn't know how to do anything? Do you really think that's not left-wing anti-masculine propaganda? You've got to be kidding me if you don't see that for what it is. And that turns off half the audience. Why would you tell Andy Corey, the editor of DC Comics, once said like in a tweet that, oh, these fascist Nazis are angry that they grew up into the people that Batman would say was evil. Yeah. These are our customers when we're comic artists, writers, editors. You don't tell your customers they're Nazis because they voted wrong.
The numbers.
You say they voted wrong. It's crazy.
The part I disagree with you there on, though, is that you say half the audience turns out. It's actually more than that. That's the misnomer. It's more people that are tuning out, and they're fundamentally tuning out because they have a vision of Star Wars. They have something they love through the 70s, through the 80s that is a thing. It is a known piece of property. You go in, you know what to expect, has a certain type of adventure, type of cadence. There's not blood everywhere. It's not that kind of action movie. It's a sci-fi swashbuckling. That's a good word for it, action movie. And the problem is that you get into these later movies and it breaks that expectation.
The
And so
verisimilitude. That's
it's
what
more
I'm
than just
talking about.
yeah, it's more than just half the people that tune out though. It's much more than that, because whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat or any of these things, you come into that movie expecting to see swashbuckling kind of action, and instead you're getting a lecture.
Yes.
You're out. You're
Right.
out.
And it would be just as terrible if they went from the right wing.
Agreed.
And it was
Agreed.
overly hating the left, and they're talking about how the bad guys are all socialists. That would be horrific. You're not going to
Totally.
find that in my book.
Absolutely.
My
It would
book
be
is about good and evil, and good guys and bad guys.
a
And
good
heroes.
example of this is if you for whatever reason they'd started to do the West Wing show again,
Right.
but they put in conservative values in there, that would be an insult to the people who watched that show
Right.
and
Right.
liked what it was. What it was
Right.
was a left wing show, but you knew you were signing on for that. That was the type of show it was.
Absolutely.
That's my point here. And that's what I think is going to happen with Lord of the Rings, is that people want to tune into that show and they just want to see some people going at it with swords and axes, and then they want to go to sleep. And instead, they're going to get something very different.
Yeah, they're going to get a left-wing lecture, though. And here's the thing. As someone who's worked closely with the Hollywood studios for years, it is, you have to be completely in the closet. You cannot say that you vote conservative. I've had an editor, Will Dennis, I'll just say his name on the air. Will Dennis told me and my wife at a rooftop party, 2017, San Diego Comic-Con, he's the editor for Vertigo in DC, something, and the punchline is, these stupid fucking Christians, am I right? We're both Christians. And we just look at him like, okay. And they outwardly, no, hold on. I'll tell you, because I was there. Hold on. They outwardly talk this way constantly in private, on Twitter, everywhere. It's if you support America, you're somehow racist. If you're a Christian, you're an idiot bigot. And it's completely bigoted, the entertainment industry, to the left. It is. And if you're not unwilling to admit that, then you're just not admitting the truth. It's self-evident. And I'll prove to you how. Where from the mainstream are mainstream, huge tentpole books, movies, whatever, that criticize progressivism and call it stupid.
Yeah.
Like they do to the right. Where is that stuff? If they really had a diversity of writers and a diversity of editors who really were willing to entertain any political idea, where is that stuff to match what they're doing from the other side?
Hollywood has had that. I mean, that has been inherent to Hollywood for quite some time.
Right.
I mean, this, again, you're not, I don't know. It sounds like you're arguing with me. This is not new information, though. This is how the industry is.
Well, but it went turbo when Trump won. I mean, you would
I agree. I think it did. I think it was going increasingly that way. I mean, things were accelerating through the 2000s. I think Bush definitely accelerated a few things. It became more popular to just kind of come right out and say what previously you might be a little quieter about. And then I think Obama did a little bit more, and then Trump definitely, the floodgates opened. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think that's anything terribly. I don't think anybody would be shocked by that.
Yeah, I mean, when you have an editor like Andy Curry tweeting things about something about the Easter Bunny and Christ, and the punchline of the joke is neither one of them exists or something like that, and it's just really, so you have the power to hire and fire at DC Comics, and these are your jokes and your political statements online. What if you made those same bigoted jokes about black people or Arabs me or whatever? It's the hostility there is insane.
The state of editorial is just dismal. I mean, regardless of any of that, you've got editors talking about getting high and not answering mail, and I mean, just you have people openly admitting that they struggle with their job. That's it for me, and I know a lot of the people who listen to the show struggle with this a little bit. The incompetence that gets shown to me, it's like you don't even get out the door to get into these things you're talking about. I hear you, I see it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
Right.
But there's some baseline stupidity that goes on.
Yeah, I think the problem is that they've gone really young and really cheap, in my opinion. I agree.
I think cheap, especially.
Yeah, that's why they go young. So then they're inexperienced. They don't know what they're talking about. So they'll send you edits or corrections, and you have to not argue, but you have to talk your way out of it because it's artistically unsound.
There's also
the things they ask you to do. Some of the editors it's literally unsound artistically what they tell you, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this person. We had some amazing editors at DC's, but I'm guessing, I don't know this, salary was way too high, and then AT&T got rid of him. That's my guess. Like Mark Chiarello, genius, but he was an experienced illustrator, colorist, all that. Brian Cunningham, great editor. You know what I mean? Love that guy. One of my good friends at DC, but he's gone too. So most of the editors and stuff, they're nice people, but you get emails and they have suggestions and they say this and that, and you think to yourself, really? Because
Well,
that doesn't make any sense artistically.
if there's not a lot of money on the table, there's not a lot to lose. That's part of this too. If you're if you're coming in with a 35K job as an assistant
Right.
editor,
Right.
what do you really care if it goes poorly? I mean, worst case scenario, you're a barista for Starbucks, you make about the same. I mean, bluntly, I don't. So, would you advocate for more higher salaries?
I would advocate, higher salaries, but way stricter hiring requirements.
Do those
I
go hand
think
in hand?
I think it should work like the NFL. One of my favorite things.
Yeah.
The coaches played. Maybe they didn't play in the NFL, but they played in college. You know what I mean, or something. They know what it's like to put their hand in the grass, get hit by a trap block, and bleed. They know. One of the problems in Western culture, period, forget the arts, is this stupid idea that is coming to academia. I have a college degree. I got scholarships. I graduated with honors. I almost got straight A's. I have zero respect for academia. I think academia is actually making people stupider because it's making them overconfident, and they don't question themselves at all. A true mark of knowledge is saying to myself, what don't I know? All day, every day, and viciously trying to find out what I don't know about life. And I think that what they should do is find a way to get veteran. It'll probably mostly be writers, because illustrators and visual artists like me, we never want to stop doing that until we, die. But I think writers, maybe if they slow down on writing stuff, they could be editors, and they would know how to work with the pencilers and the inkers and all that better. And in the old days, guess what they were at Marvel and DC? A ton of them were still working as writers, or they were former writers, and it worked so much better because you had really experienced people. So I think editorial is a huge thing, but I think with academia, I got up my point on academia. In academia, they're teaching people epistemological knowledge is better than technical knowledge. And an epistemological knowledge is book knowledge. It means you went to class, you studied the book, you got an A in the class, and now you think you know. You don't know. In life, experience is not the best teacher, it's the only teacher. Would you rather have someone, operate on you? They're going to do surgery on you, and they read every book and went to UCLA Medical, and they've never touched a human body with any of the tools?
Sure.
Or would you rather have someone that went to a bad medical school, a low-rated one and all that, but they've been a doctor for a while performing surgery? Of course, the real-life application of things, like actual movement of your body and experience, that's the only way you actually learn. You cannot learn things really from reading books. You can learn what other people learned. And that is useless information without practice. So I think you have a bunch of ideological left-wing kids editing comics, and they've all been brainwashed by the sociology department at the junior college that the white man is the devil and America is horrible and capitalism is terrible, yet they choose to work at the biggest capitalist companies in the world. That always makes me laugh. You're like, capitalism sucks, and then you work for Disney. Like, okay,
you got to pay rent. So
that's great.
All
this of you to work for the giant mouse.
Whatever ideology you want to go home and you want to talk about and you want to post on Twitter, wherever you're coming from,
right?
Turns out you need cash.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I'm going a lot here. I'm sorry. I'll let you ask more questions.
No, we went. So there's a bunch of people right now going, Gabe's giving it to Perch. So good for him right now.
I hope you don't feel that. I'm not trying to be antagonistic.
No. I do. I struggle.
I'm passionate about this, not towards you. You didn't do anything.
No. But I think a lot of people struggle, I think, with some of my commentary in this channel because I chalk up to idiocy a lot more than ideology. And I think people struggle.
My brother tells me that. My brother tells me that all the time, that it's more incompetence than malice.
I've met too many people. Now this will segue nicely into kind of your background and everything else, but I've met too many people in this industry where, yeah, maybe those things are going on, but they also, you wonder how they're dressing themselves in the morning.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I guess I could talk about how you voted, but I'm surprised you're functional as a human being.
Right.
I mean, so that's where I start. And I know a lot of other people start in a different direction. But it's good. I've also promised always in this channel, I talk to everybody. And so I'm glad you're bringing it tonight. So it's good.
Okay.
But we're off track. So tell us about your book.
Okay. My book, Truth, Justice, American Way. It has returned to classic action. Let me see if I can find that flavor text I have on my
By the way, going through your Indiegogo that you have on here, and I appreciate that you're using Indiegogo because clearly you're bothered by Kickstarter using NFTs.
Right. No,
So
you know what? I don't know enough about that to care or like get mad or complain.
my
NFTs
my
seem
my
like
dry humor, by the way, everybody's like, anyway, that's just me.
okay. NFTs are digital beanie babies, as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
that is correct. Or
It
pogs,
seems it
your
seems like
choice.
a pyramid scheme, and I don't get involved in things I don't understand. So
It's Beanie Babies, Pogs, whatever flavor you want to
I
go with.
I know what the blockchain is. I studied it. I watched YouTube videos
Mhm.
explain. I know exactly what the blockchain is. I know how all crypto works. But NFTs to me, I don't see them retaining any value. I
No.
don't see how that retains value. Is it money laundering? Is it some weird thing like that? I don't know.
At the end of the day, that's how we're going to bring everybody together again, is that we can all unify by around that this is stupid. But anyway,
Right.
okay, so you have this, and if you read through your Indiegogo, and I went through everything here, what you don't see, for example, the word woke doesn't appear anywhere.
No.
You don't. You solely, and this is really important for people to, because everybody wants to get into people are trying to raise money on these. This entire site talks about your comic, talks about what's going to get.
Right.
There's no, this is going to stick it to the left wing.
Nope.
There's no, we're making SJWs eat it. There's none of that. It's
None of it.
purely your comic.
Right.
And by the way, I'm glad. Thank you for that. I just, as somebody who sells comics, read comics, I enjoy just the comics.
Right.
So I appreciate that.
all this is how I felt reading comics when I was 12 to like 17 years old. Excited. That's it. The Savage Dragon wasn't left wing yet. He was just fighting crime in Chicago. It was cool. He beat the crap out of bad guys. That was it. There were high stakes. He could have died. His friends could have died. The world could have blown up. And he saved the day. That's literally what our book is about. We have fully developed characters with backstories and family histories, very deep characters. Again, I'm a good writer. Dave is a great writer. He worked on like Ben 10 and Superman, Batman. He did not work as a writer. He's a character designer, animator stuff. But he totally understands story because he's working right there with Paul Dini and Bruce Timm working for them. He's working in that studio, talking to those people, not every day, but a lot. So we understand story greatly. And this is just, and thank you for vindicating me. You went through my Indiegogo. I don't mention the left at all. And you know what? I don't care. I don't mention the right. I think a right-wing preaching comic book would be so stupid and boring. And America is perfect and always right. And if you ever voted, if you voted to the left of Trump, you're a commie, traitor. Like that's nowheresville.
People don't want to read that either. I mean, they don't. I don't think people want to read that story. They don't want to. So you're getting there before I could ask a question, but
go for it.
The narrative that we hear in comics, and again, I've got a long memory, collecting comics in the 80s, selling comics in the 90s.
Sure.
People came in, they bought comics. They enjoyed just action, simple films. If I look at some of the things that are being reviewed pretty well, the Kingsman film did pretty well. Uncharted is doing pretty well. Inside those films, you have a pretty straightforward action story. And they get criticized for, well, there's not more depth to that. People need more nuance. They need more political flavor. They need more ideology. It's not enough to just do action anymore. But every time you look at the dollars and where they go, it says the opposite.
Did you see a brand new show about a month old, Reacher, on Amazon Prime?
Yeah, it's great.
Fantastic. And it wasn't woke at all. And guess what?
It wasn't anything. It was just action.
Right. The lead detective was a black guy. The tough cop was a woman, and they were just written straight like the 80s and 90s. You didn't have the 100-pound woman flip 6'5" Jack Reacher over and then say something about the patriarchy. And you didn't have the black guy constantly complaining about racism and slavery and all this stuff. He was just an awesome guy he was so well written, that character, and he could have been any race. Jack Reacher could have been any race. The woman could have been a man. They were just human. And that's the bigotry of this SJW writing, where they say, oh, we need to add a black guy. And I would say, well, which one? Because there's millions and millions, and they're all individuals. How dare you act like they're all the same? We need to add a gay guy. Well, which one? Because they're all different. That's John, that's Fred, that's Mike, that's Dave. What do you mean gay guy? What the hell is that supposed to mean?
I mean, they also have a long history of having strong characters that fit those qualifications that date back decades that sit pretty unused on the shelf. I mean,
Yeah,
that's been my frustration with comics. I mean, just being honest with you, is that we have characters that they establish over in DC. Have Obsidian, who they spend a
right.
lot of time on to establish that character. Then he vanishes, and we get the narrative that, well, it's a white guy's hobby. That drives
Yeah.
me crazy.
Well, here's the thing I would say for people that complain
It's
comics are too
great.
white. Comics were predominantly white characters. And do you know why that is? Most of the people, hold on, in this country, hold on, are white. Guess what most of the characters in Chinese stories are? Guess what race most of the people in Mexico are when you write a story in Mexico?
Sure.
Guess what race most of the characters in Filipino fiction are? It's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard, that they're too white. It's like, well, most of the people working in the business were white.
But
So yes,
regardless, I mean, but even regardless of that, you have very strong characters, whether it's Storm, whether it's Bishop,
yeah,
whether it's Captain Marvel, in this case, Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel, whether
right,
you have
right,
John Stewart, whether you have Rhodey, I mean, you can go down the line of
right,
very strong characters. Vertigo is doing great work with alternative lifestyle, gay characters.
right.
They were doing that. And it was selling and it was popular. This is the part about all this that makes me crazy, because it's like we're memory holding something that worked. Those comics sold really, really well.
And why do you think it is? What do you? Because
They were
I'll
fun to
tell you.
read. That's it.
No. But why do you think they changed the way they do inclusion?
Well, that's a good question. I mean,
I know the answer.
Okay.
Go ahead, tell me
we
yours.
probably have different answers, but I mean, my answer is the people who are writing it today want to have their victory. They want to feel like they're doing something brand new that's never been done before. And so they intentionally forget what's been done in the past. It's the
Right.
fallacy of this: we stand on the shoulders of giants. People don't want to
Right.
stand on the shoulders of giants. They want to be the first ones to march or do a protest, or
Right.
they want to feel like they're unique in what they do. And so they intentionally forget everything that was done in the past or insult it,
Right.
so they can
So-
have these moments again. But it's very, very hollow.
So we agree 100%. When I said earlier they do it for a backpat, and you're saying they don't want to stand on the shoulder of giants, they want to be the first. That is all about ego, and so they are their own god. They are their
It's
own god.
frustrating to me, because it is this industry, comics. I think if you do believe you want to come to this because you want to be progressive or you want to be on the forefront of things, comics has been there for a long time. Comics
Right.
led the way in a lot of entertainment to have
Right.
these other things going on. And we chose to just hit the reset button and want to start all over again with that. And to me, that's insulting to the George Perez's, the Chris Claremonts, the people out
Right.
there, even the Jim Shooters, the Larry Hamas, who built all this stuff up years ago.
Right.
Anyway,
Absolutely. But I think, I'm telling you from the inside, you have no idea how bigoted Hollywood is. It's always had a leftist bent since the 50s or the 60s. It's always, after the Dalton Trumbo stuff and the Council for Un-American, all the McCarthyism, it kind of snapped in the other direction. And the communists warned us, they did warn us, they wouldn't beat us in the Cold War with bullets and tanks and bombs. They said to us, they outwardly said to us, it's that famous video, I forget his name, he was a communist guy, and it's a video from like the 70s, speaking years later. They said the plan was invade their colleges, invade their media, and get the generation underneath and turn these people to the left. And then you look at the subversion that's gone in pop culture and academia, and then you're like, well, they told you they would do it, and then you saw it done, and then what? You're going to deny it? That's what they've done. They've subverted it to change our culture, to weaken us, to divide us. And I'm telling you, when you destroy classic values that are based on reality and logic of the human experience, you make bad art. When you make art with the intention of, I want to be praised, you're a jerk when you do that. That's not what art is about. Art is about being humble and being uplifted, that you have the gift from God to do something so wonderful that can touch people. I did a story with Peter Tomasi and Barry Kitson like 7-8 years ago. And it was I need a drink. I've been talking about, hold on.
Yeah, please, yeah.
And it was the Justice League, and they visit a cancer ward. Sorry, I've been podcasting YouTubing all week, talking so much. Sorry. They visited.
You're out there hustling your comic.
Oh, I'm shilling. I'm shaking the can for money, trying to give people amazing fun adventures. They visit children's like cancer hospital, or the kids come to the Justice League Tower. I don't remember, but they play hide and go seek or treasure hunt, and they're just treating these kids. But the subtext, the whole story is like, these kids aren't going to make it. Some of them, they have oxygen tanks. They're in wheelchairs. Some of them, they're going to die. And they all get on spacesuits. The Green Lantern makes a spaceship with his ring, and Superman flies them all to the moon, and he etches their names in the rocks so the names will live forever. And it's really sad, and it ends with the kids like on the moon with Superman, I believe, is the final shot. It's been like 7-8 years.
And then he flies off and leaves them there. Yeah. No.
Oh, surprise ending. No, but people come up to me with that book at conventions crying, saying their daughter had cancer and she made it and she survived, but we read this to her, and I bought 100 copies of this book and gave them to the Children's Hospital. And it's like, that's what we're supposed to do with art. We are not supposed to virtue signal and say, hey, everyone, I made a half gay, half black, disabled, illegal immigrant. I'm a hero. Clap for me. No, that's you think you're God and you want to be praised. That is the opposite of art. That is narcissism and insanity, and it's bad art. It's bad writing. It's why Disney isn't making a Star Wars movie every year and making $1 billion. If Disney just did regular, not right-wing, not left-wing, they just did regular adventure and they didn't preach and have that purple-haired lady yell at the male hero. Instead, they let the male, handsome hero save the day like we have a million times. They would be making a new Star Wars movie every 6 months and cashing $1 billion check every 6 months. But their left-wing, their far left progressive ideology is in the way. And they need to stop. They don't need to go right-wing. They don't need to go right-wing. They need to just adventure that unites everyone.
It's funny because I think a lot of people who watched the first film, the J.J. Abrams one, I guess he did the both, but the bookends. But if you would have had the female character, the Rey character, actually just come out and have a straightforward adventure, and she was the hero, I don't think anyone really would have objected to that, because they were already on board for either Princess Leia or Padme. Well, Padme had a really weird arc during that prequel. Right. But I mean, I think that the world has supported female characters plenty.
Of course.
And so it's interesting you say that, because I think one of the weird parts about these last 3 films was that they built up a strong female character in the form of Rey. I'd say people were calling her Mary Sue and everything else, but she
doesn't have a character arc. They don't build her up.
They interfered with it a little bit, right? So I think the first film set some things up. It wasn't great, but it was a popcorn film. It was largely a remake of the first one.
Sure.
And the second one, it's almost like they decided, a lot of people focused on her, but if you look at her arc, she went backwards. And then they did Holdo. That's the character. That's the purple-haired lady. Holdo.
Oh, Holdo. Okay.
They put emphasis on these new characters that they then promptly killed during the film. It was the weirdest writing. I've had this discussion with others. It's like, well, it's a very left-wing film. I mean, sure, but the writing was also just bad.
Right.
Like, it wasn't a good film. I mean, like, to your point, if the politics had been inverted, it still would have sucked. That wasn't a good movie.
Would have sucked, and you will never get that in my comics unless that was the task at hand, and we would say it up front and say, we're telling this right-wing story because whatever reason we're telling it. But if you try and go down the middle with adventure, and then you're just like, oh, the purple-haired lady's yelling at the toxic male, people just want to leave the theater. It's like, what are you doing to me? I'm here to movies to escape Twitter. I'm not here to watch Twitter as a movie.
There was a survey about the moment in that film people liked the most, or the one that people remembered the most. And
when it ended,
the overwhelming best scene in that movie was people saying the time when one of the spaceships collided into the other spaceship and it blew a bunch of stuff up, and it was pretty cool. That was the thing people remembered. The fact that in this case, the purple-haired lady drove the ship into the other ship.
Right.
And so it's kind of sad that in a 3-hour film, the thing people remember most is 2 ships crashing into each other.
Women drivers. Kidding.
I wasn't. Yeah, that is the joke.
It was all right. But even that, let me get super nerd. Let me get nerdy here and put my glasses on.
Oh, so now
why would you crash the ship into another one when all these ships have robots that could drive it, or like probably autopilot better?
I agree. You could fly that thing from a distance.
There you go. There's breaking verisimilitude and having Jon Snow escape in the Jeep Cherokee because they want to make a point that the purple-haired lady, the strong feminist, sacrificed herself. Look at me, everyone. I wrote a story where a woman was sacrificing. So they broke the logic of a story. You have an effing robot that can drive the ship, and you don't have him do it so the woman can die. So in story, when you write it, you have to earn the moments. You can't just say, I get this emotional moment. You have to earn them for the reader, because logic in your head, when you're observing art, it's hardwired into us. We don't learn it. Logic is, ABC, right? So when I write a story, if I write something that's illogical, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel that. If I go up to a piano and just bang on keys, it's discord. You feel it. When I hit chord, you don't have to teach a baby music, right? You just play music and they start dancing. They know. We know what logic is. So when you have Holdo, Admiral Holdo, ram herself into the ship to make a female hero, make a point about men or whatever left-wing point you're making, everyone feels that doesn't make sense.
Well, it was what they were trying to do there is to say this person is so heroic that she sacrificed herself for the good of everyone else. She is very heroic. Look at how amazing this character is.
Unfortunately, do it, but earn it. Earn that moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, unfortunately, you're right. Robot could have done that. She could have gone on the other ship and piloted the ship with a PlayStation controller. I mean, there's a million ways this could have gone. And unfortunately, the people who were also watching that scene, once they get over how kind of maybe cool it looks to see two things hitting each other, they go, why didn't they do this in the first Star Wars movie when they were attacking the Death Star? Couldn't they have just thrown a ship into it? What the hell? So anyway, it breaks a lot of different things. No, I absolutely agree. It's how much though are the labels themselves screwing it up for people? Because in many cases, that film was disliked by a majority of people, left and right, because it was dumb. However, people on Twitter, people on social media on the left wing felt the need that they have to get in there and they have to defend it because it's talking to their points, it's using their words. But it was a dumb movie. And when everybody kind of settles down and admits that, they were like, well, yeah, that movie was pretty stupid. With comics, you see a lot of the comics that are praised and the writers that are really promoted, they have no sales. People aren't actually going to the store and buying those comics. So
then you know what people really think. Remember, the media is show media.
No, you're right.
Still the media. So
it feels, this is the frustration, the inner frustration I have with all this is that people are fighting about stuff. They clearly don't actually care about it. I mean, you look at these, you pick the most ideological comic you can think of, right? Right now, you or the people who are reading it's the one that's really hammering home on those points.
I haven't been to the comic shop. I haven't been to the comic shop in like 5 years because it all went woke. I don't want to read it. If something comes out with gorgeous art or there's a collected edition with beautiful art, I always go art first over writing. I'll buy things with cool art, but I don't buy comics because I think they mostly suck.
But think about it though. You look at one of these the most ideological comic you think of. A person will post on Twitter, it'll get 30, 40,000 likes, it will get retweeted, it will get huge attraction.
Right.
The sales in the store, maybe it cracks 25,000. Maybe. Right. What's curious about all this is if you really wanted to prove a point, and I did a separate video of this, I want to get your take on it. Okay. If you really want to prove a point about how great these comics are, how great this ideological message is, why didn't everyone go out, spend $3.99, buy it, make it the #1 selling comic of the year? As low as comic sales are, it would be really easy to do that.
Right.
Just get 100,000 of your friends to all buy the comic. Bam, you've got the #1 comic of the year. You can brag all you want about it.
You know why?
They don't do that. They don't actually spend $3.99.
You know what? Because they don't care. It is about ego. On the writer creative end of the SJW thing, it's about praising themselves and looking like a hero. And on the other end, the customer, as we've seen, people vote with their wallets. They don't really care about this stuff. They like that taking truth, justice, American away from Superman, denying that he's American. And that character specifically is very American. To deny that, they love how it makes people like me feel, and that's why they do it. They love that. They love to stick the finger in the eye.
It's funny though. Because
take that.
It's funny because the vast majority of people are going to go into the comic shop and they're like, oh yeah, Superman, the American hero, truth, justice, and the American way. Right. They're going to still do that because that's what they know the character is. And if they open up the book and they're like, well, this doesn't remotely reflect 40 years of knowledge of what I think this character is, I don't know what this is. They put it back.
Right, exactly.
Look at
how the book I walked off of famously. It was Superman, Son of Kal-El. And I was on Justice League, Young Justice, with Brian Bendis and John Timms and myself. We were the art team and Bendis was the writer. It was a fun little book. It didn't seem to be very left-wing or anything like that. It was just kind of adventures. It was a casualty of COVID, that book. You know what I mean? It's one of the DC books that got canceled because it was never really selling that high anyway. And but John Timms is one of the best artists I've ever worked with. He's a former animator. I think he must have a background in animation because his characters are insanely fluid. And you take a guy
I
like
agree.
that.
Great artist.
I think we did such a good job on that. DC Comics rewarded us by saying, you two are the art team for Superman. We're going to relaunch it. But I think it was such a compliment to us because they didn't even have a writer yet. But we said, we know we want you two to do the art. And we were so excited, but we knew because of COVID, it would be months for this thing to get going.
Right.
So we find out, it's Daniel Warren Johnson is the writer. And I'm so excited because he just does adventure. He doesn't go. He might be a far left lunatic. I don't know the guy. Maybe he's right wing. I don't know. And it's good that I don't know. You know what I mean? In his storytelling.
Which in fairness, is the majority of the writers, I do think fit into that. It's the problem is, and I bet the people listening to go, I don't agree, but we get kind of ruined by a handful of people who are so noisy on Twitter or wherever it happens to be.
Right.
I understand stuff goes on behind the scenes. And yes, to your earlier point, Hollywood has been left-wing, is left-wing, absolutely. And it has been for a long time. But the majority of writers actually just keep their mouth shut, and artists.
Right. And isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
Isn't that terrible?
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's terrible. Maybe it's kind of good. I don't want to know.
Well, what will happen if you come out and you're a writer for DC Comics and you say, F Trump, F all his Nazi supporters? What happens to you?
No, you get away with that because
no. You get jobs. You get rewarded. What happens if you come out and say,
I would like to not know what people are up to because they just keep their mouth shut, not because they're scared to open their mouth.
Right.
So there's a big difference between those two.
So I threw this up here because when I left DC, it made international news for like 2 or 3 days. It was I don't know if you've ever gone globally viral. I have one time. It was surreal. People call you. I have a book deal now. I won't even talk about that. Like a prose book. Like I have a book deal. I have all these deals going. Been on TV a few times. I'm going to go on more in the next few weeks. And it was really something to do that. But I just felt like, so let me go why this happened. Because Daniel Warren Johnson's the writer. And then like 2 months, nothing has happened for a while. Because COVID, we're not working on anything. We're like doing small stuff and fill-in stuff, waiting for them to decide what's going on with the Superman book. And then we get the call that it's Tom Taylor. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh no, because he's active against Comicsgate and all the Nazi. I'm pretty bad at being a white supremacist. You know what I mean? And as a Mexican Arab guy, it's not very successful at that. And I'm like, oh no. So I write an email to Jim Lee and the bosses at DC Comics. I tell them, hey, if this Tom Taylor says he tries to kick me off the book before we even start because I'm friends with Ethan or I've worked for Doug TenNapel, I'll sue this company. So the lawyer wrote me back and said, oh, no, sir, we don't discriminate and blah, 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 blah. So we wait. And then I get the first script from Tom Taylor. And the name of the first story is Truth, Justice, and a Better World. And you see on the screen was eventually changed to Truth, Justice, and Better Tomorrow. And as soon as I saw Truth, Justice, and Better World by Tom Taylor, I'm like, oh, my God, I know exactly what he's up to. I know what he's up to. I know what he's going to do here. I did great work. 3 books I've worked on for DC. I think I've been nominated for Eisners and 2 of them won it. I was able to work with this left-wing people, hear all their insults about me personally. They didn't know. I kept my mouth shut. But I was able to do great work for them and be a professional because, hey, we're making art. That's what we're supposed to do. But they couldn't tolerate for a second me saying, hey, that's wrong. This guy's American. Why are you making Superman not American? That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. I told Jim, we have Jim Lee's phone number. I text him. And I told him, hey, and I was mad at him. And I texted him all this stuff. And I said, South Korea didn't give you the life you have. America did. My dad escaped Gaddafi. Gaddafi murdered my grandfather, murdered my dad's friends. I would ask you, Perch, and anyone listening to this, do you know your grandparents on both sides, your aunts and uncles, cousins on both sides? I don't know my dad's family. I never met him. Never been to my dad's homeland. My dad was on a kill list for socialist dictator Gaddafi for decades. We couldn't visit home. Now Gaddafi's dead. Maybe we can visit. But we never made the bonds when I was young. That's heartbreaking. Absolutely. I'm not going to let socialism come into this country. I'm not going to be a part of it. And when they push this left stuff, it's not a joke. It's not just Lord of the Rings. It's not just the American way. How do you think it starts? You could say the sky is falling. All of this stuff is granular. And it's built one action at a time. And if you look at the history of communism and the Bolsheviks and taking over, they infiltrated the media. They infiltrated academia. This stuff is as serious as it gets. And I won't be a part of it at all. It's ridiculous. And I told Jim Lee, South Korea didn't give you this. You're a millionaire many times over, prestigious. Everyone respects you. You've had a Hall of Fame career. because of America and the opportunities it provided you. How dare you do that to this country? Superman's power isn't flying or laser vision or freeze breath or anything. His power is his heart, restraint, compassion, love. He could rule the world as a tyrant king with his powers, and he chooses not to. Do you know why? Because he was raised here by Midwest Christian American valued people. He is as American as it gets. And to take away his citizenship, to take away his slogan, all that, it's so insulting. It's so wrong. And I just like, you know what? I'm done with you guys. You want to keep doing this nonsense? Do it without me. And I praise God for my friend David Williams, the illustrator of this. He came to me and it's like, well, this is our answer back. We're going to show them just classic heroes and stuff. And what we're also going to not do is yell at them and fight with them on Twitter and just be crazy, angry people, because then we're just as bad. We're down in the mud. We're rolling around with them. And we're just part of the chaos and the division. What we're going to do is we're going to show people what we love. We're going to make it. It's going to be better than theirs. And we're going to show people why this stuff is precious. It's important, and it should be fought for and preserved. And if a character, I don't know. I'll leave it there for now. But I have some other ideas. But what do you think of what I'm saying there? Am I misled?
No, I mean, look, I think an interview it's my goal to let you talk and to hear your side. That's what and hopefully the people who are listening to this are appreciating that. So they're not coming here for me. They're coming for people I talk to. But I think. I mean, you raised a bunch of things. I mean, first off, on the case of Superman, I think there is and has been and continues to be a vast misunderstanding of what makes Superman tick. And in a lot of cases, it's people wanting to overcomplicate him and other things. The way you described it is correct. Superman is a alien refugee, but he's a baby. His template for what it means to be human, and I understand he's Kryptonian and everything, but what it means to be a person, his goals and his values were given him by Midwestern values. And they did. Christianity definitely came into it, but it was more just, I guess, that 1960s, 1970s. I mean, I get he was before then, but it was that, do good to your neighbors, respect America. It was very rooted in America. And when earlier we were talking about people who walk in to buy Superman, that's the Superman they know. And in fact, in many ways, they're like, well, he's a Boy Scout. He's going to be a little bit goody two shoes because he does the right thing. He's very American, very quote unquote cheesy to some extent. And I think it's that little infection that has caused people to want to ruin Superman because they want to rethink him. They got to he's too boring. Got to reimagine him. What if we made him more edgy? Every time they've done that with Superman, it's blown up in their face.
Right.
And we wind up going back to Superman before. What's funny is Superman took out the American way right before the New 52. He kind of famously renounced it, and it got a negative reaction, not because people were saying, oh, this is woke, because that really wasn't a thing at the time. There wasn't any of this terminology, but it wasn't Superman. And so New 52 came along and they reset by and large, and reset with Grant Morrison of all people was resetting. Right. So and I feel pretty confident. I know a lot of the viewers will disagree with this, that what's going to happen in a few years is it will reset again, because it always tends to go in the circle. The part that gets me frustrated is, how many times do you have to learn the lesson that this overcomplication doesn't work?
Well, again, I'll throw this up here if you don't mind me memeing on it. The quote that's going around about the stupid Amazon Lord of the Rings. Evil cannot create anything new. They can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have intended or made. So when you say they want to make Superman edgy and evil and all these things, well, that tells me they're pretty evil. If you want to make an evil Superman, then make a new character based on his template that's evil. Show me your skill as a writer, if you have any. Don't just glom onto all his financial success and brand name that's been earned by people like me making quality comics, and then put your crap on it and pretend you're a success. Because it doesn't work. You see the sales. It's laughable that Disney isn't making 2 Star Wars movies a year. They should be just printing money with Star Wars. If they would just not be right-wing or left-wing, adventure, adventure, adventure. That's all they have to do. It's so simple.
And I know people struggle with this a little bit, it is the success of the MCU. That film property, people go on about it, that, oh, look, there's woke stuff going on to the MCU and everything else. But if you really look at those films, by and large, they are cookie cutter template films that just turn out very basic things. There's ideology if you squint in there, or maybe even a little bit more than that. But they're not deep films.
No.
And they make tons of money. Why? No. Because people just want to come in, they want to be entertained, and they want to have this stuff in their face. Again, either way, And
Right.
granted, I just for the sake of any doubt, because people misunderstand, yeah, there's definitely more of a left wing agenda being pushed than a right wing agenda in Hollywood
But
because
it's not
that's what's moving.
overt and just stinking everything up. It's
But
much more down the middle. Now,
but nobody wants it. They just want
right,
entertainment. Yeah.
right. And but now the new Marvel movies where they push the identity politics, they don't do as good. And they try and blame it. They tried to blame it on COVID, and then Superman, Spider-Man No Way Home came out during COVID and is like one of the highest grossing movies ever, and it's not woke. Jack Reacher got renewed in 2 days or 3 days at Amazon for season 2, and it's not woke. It's not right wing. It's not left wing. It's adventure that unites all of us. And that's what I'm making to the highest degree with award winning guys that are at the top of their game. That's what you're going to get from me. I want you to buy this book for sure. I want this book to change lives. The theme of my book is about, I never read that color, that little blurb I had for it. But can I read that? Is that all right?
Absolutely. Please do.
I don't think I read this. Maybe I read this earlier, but
I apologize. People reading that we're going in and out of everything, but hopefully you're keeping up with us. It's
me, man. Discussion. I keep cutting you off, and I think really fast, so I interrupt, and I don't mean to do it.
And I'm slow and drunk, so that's a bad combo. Yeah.
You're kind to have me on. I said the story here when you go to my Indiegogo page. We proudly present to you the bombastic, action-packed adventure you've been waiting for. Truth, Justice, and American Way are the world's most beloved superhero team, the Honor Guardians of America. Their world is shattered when disaster strikes. They're left with little hope and even less resource. In order to set things right, the Honor Guardians will have to find the strength and resolve to overcome grief, despair, in a world that now hates them.
Yeah, it's
nothing is right wing there. Nothing is left wing there. This is fun, high stakes. People die in our books. I'm not going to say who, but it's exciting adventure because that's what I grew up on. I don't want to beat people over the head with my religion or my politics or anything. It's ridiculous.
This is. I hope this doesn't come across as an insult. I certainly don't mean it that way. Your tagline for your story, if you had put this out in the 80s or the 70s, tons of books sounded exactly like this.
Right. That's kind of the point.
Good. I'm glad you didn't take that as an insult. I don't mean it that way. It's simple, and simple doesn't mean bad.
Not at all. You know what you're getting here. You don't know the exact twists and turns and unexpected whatever in my story, but you know what you're getting. You do know what you're getting with me. You're getting some of the most amazing illustrations ever from Gary Martin and David Williams. I mean, they're just at the top of their craft. I'm the colorist, by the way, also, and because that's why I spent a lot of time.
Story and script. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I'm doing story, script, and color, and David is doing story and pencils, and Gary's doing inks. You know what you're getting with this book. You know my comic book already. Think of Goonies. Think of the original Star Wars. Think of that. Think of X-Men from the 90s and the 80s. That's what you're getting. Think of we're not R-rated. Kids can read this and enjoy it, but it's sophisticated enough for adults. My favorite comic book property of all time, the thing I think is the most well-executed thing ever, is the Batman animated series. I think that's the most well-executed because you could be 8 years old and watch that, and you could be 48 years old and watch it, and it's still sophisticated enough. It won't confuse children, and it won't bore adults. It'll entertain everyone, and that's what you're getting here. And you know what I mean? And you're getting guys that worked with those. I worked with Paul Dini on the Arkham City comics. I did the issues of that with him. So I'm familiar with all that. So you absolutely know what you're getting with my product. I take that as a compliment that you're saying you've heard of stuff like that.
Well, it's funny. I mean, if you put this on the shelf in a comic shop, and I think you have a number of different tiers. So definitely the link to this campaign is in the description of the video. You've seen it on screen probably many times at this point. But you see, and you can click on the little, there should be a little tag that you see in the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're on iTunes, sorry, but look in the description, you can find it there. You've got some retailer tiers, I believe, unless I was mistaken. Yeah, you do have a retailer tier here.
I do.
If this comic was up on the shelf next to other things, people who are walking into that shop are not going to look at this and point to it and go, oh, this is from the guy who's kind of wanting to do something that's not woke. They're going to look at this and say, here's some superheroes. I like superheroes. This looks like action. I'll buy that.
Right. Absolutely. I don't want to be mean to people on the left. I voted Democrat in the past when I was younger. They're my fellow citizens. You know what I want to do with the woke, the far, far, far left, the woke? I want to convert them. I want to show them how good you can make comics fun again, superhero comics. And they're going to look at it and go, I hate that guy. And then they're going to look at it and go, that's pretty good. They're going to buy it. They're going to like it. And they go, you know what? I'm inspired to make something great like this. Forget identity politics. You know what I mean? Forget that stuff. If we have gay characters, fine, if it makes sense for the story. If we have white guys, Chinese, it doesn't matter. We're human. We're human.
Do you find it puzzling or frustrating that, you got Marvel and DC, both of them are putting out roughly 80 books a month right now.
Right.
Each. I'm no joke. I mean, we go through it. It always stuns people when I've done live streams, when I've done other interviews. Everybody across all I've talked to everybody from Ron Marsh, Sean Murphy. We put up the titles, and people digest it when they see all these books. My God, my company's putting out 80 books this month.
Right.
This month alone, not counting trades and graphic novels, 80 books. With 80 books, shouldn't there be room for a title like yours? I mean,
please.
1, 2.
There you go. And that's okay. No, let's
go. Wouldn't that be smart to just?
That is brilliant that you said that. Let's do a thought experiment here, sort of an analogy. You own a company, Perch. It's a big manufacturing plant. You guys build some gizmo, and you live in Dallas. There's a lot of black people living in Texas. You have 300 employees, Perch, and you don't have one black guy on staff. Do you know what I can say about you pretty confidently? You know what I could say. I could call you racist pretty easily if you lived in Houston. It's even blacker than Dallas. And you had this big factory and not one black person worked for your 300 or 500 employees. I would say you were a racist and I'd be pretty safe. Would you agree or disagree with that?
No, I think that would be, I think you could definitely point to that.
Okay, yes. So you look at DC and Marvel Comics. Where is the book like mine? Where is the book saying Biden is terrible or left-wing progressivism is terrible? Because they have ones that say conservatism and Christians and patriotism are terrible. They have those books. They do say those things. So where are the books saying the other thing? So now that we can't find them, just like we can't find the black people at your theoretical plant, you didn't really do this.
I do not have a plant. Yes, please.
You did not do that. We disavow that.
Nobody start cancel my channel. Yes.
Right. That never happened. He is a good guy, Perch.
Yeah.
And so if we can't find one conservative message or anti-progressive message under the floor mat at DC Comics, are they bigoted against conservatives?
No, I agree with your point, but I think it's worse than that.
Hold on.
But you don't even have the middle. My point is, you don't. Your book,
they're that bigoted. We don't see. Brilliant, bro. You expanded on my point.
No, your book. I mean, let's for the moment. We could all people can go and they can fund your book. They can get it in the mail. And they can open it up, and on page 1, you've got like heroes attacking Biden or AOC, and they're like, damn it, this guy promised us that he wasn't going to get into that. And here it is. But let's assume that's not there for the moment, and you just open it up and you get a superhero story like you would have seen in the 80s.
Right.
Why aren't those stories in these 80 books? I'm not talking about conservative writers. I'm talking about the it's not even the middle, just
that's an even better point than what I said. That's an even better point. So not only are they prejudiced against conservative, and conservative preachy books would be lame. Oh,
they would absolutely
against normal stuff. You're agreeing with me.
I want my frustration here with all this is that people are outthinking it. And I do think the terms get people bent around the axle a little bit. It's not that inherently hard. Both these companies have the memory, they have the past that suggests they know how to do this.
Oh yeah.
They're just not you don't have just plain old books where you pick them up and you read them. And that's not entirely fair, by the way. And I think there's examples where you pick up, Jed McKay's Moon Knight, for example, and it feels like a pretty straightforward superhero story.
Sure.
This will drive people on this channel insane, but you pick up Ron Mars, Ron Lim, Silver Surfer, and it feels like an 80s story. It does. Sure. Now, I know people are upset about the guy on Twitter and everything else, but if you pick up that comic, it reads like an 80s superhero comic.
Yeah.
And Miracle Among Miracles, both of those books I mentioned, beat every single title DC printed except one in the month of January in sales.
Well, there you go.
Only Batman beat. So consider this: only Batman beat Ron Mars and Ron Lim's Silver Surfer in 2021.
Yeah,
that's sending to me a pretty clear message that people don't want to get into all this bullshit, and they just want superhero adventure comics. Just
Right.
like the people tuning into Lord of the Rings just want to see elves and dwarves, whatever the hell it is, beat each other to a pulp. That's what they're
Right.
looking for.
And when you see that big, fat, black lady dwarf, you can't be in the immersion of fantasy. You know you're being preached to politically. We all know.
Here's the
You
funny
can't
part
tell
about
yourself
that.
you're not being preached to when you see that. You're being told, Perch, I'm guessing you're a white guy. You might not be, but I'm guessing because most
Mostly.
people are. Perch, you're a bad guy because you didn't want to include this black woman. I included her, so I'm a hero. Praise me now. That's what it is, and it's garbage.
Do you think, and this is a tough question for you, or for all of us to think about, because it requires us to suspend a lot of what we know and we've seen. So it's not really a fair question. If you tuned into this Lord of the Rings, none of this advertising had happened, right?
Right.
You one day you woke up and holy shit, there's a new show on Amazon. You clicked on it and you watched it. And about midway through the show, the dwarves are doing whatever they're doing. They're wandering around the caves. I don't know. They're just hanging out. And there was this black actress dwarf just hanging out there with all the dwarves. And then they moved on to the next scene, and then there's elves and everything else. But nobody made a big deal of it. Nobody dished a press release. They didn't put it on a poster.
Yeah.
They didn't tell everybody, hey, look what we're doing. We're making Lord of the Rings more progressive. It was just in there.
Yeah.
Do you think anyone would have cared?
I think in a vacuum, not as much, but in the context of everything that's going on, you know what they're up to because they've done it with a million other
context.
shows.
That's why that's a tough question to ask. Because
Yeah.
there is all this other stuff around it. But that's
I saw an amazing meme today. It's not naughty or anything. I'm going to throw it up on here, and it's going to make you laugh. So there's some very horrible, serious stuff going on in Ukraine and Russia. I don't know where you come down on it, but I saw a meme about it. Did you hear about there's some fighter pilot, and I think this is probably just wartime propaganda, but there's a fighter pilot they're calling the Ghost of Kiev, and he shot down 5 Russians on the first night of the conflict. You've heard of this?
I heard about it, yeah.
Okay, so here was the meme I saw today. When Netflix releases the Ghost of Kiev, there's your pilot.
Yeah.
Right? Does that look like the person that you would expect to see get out of a Ukrainian fighter jet? Nope, it's a woman. Most fighter pilots are men. It's a black woman. Most Ukrainian people aren't black. But this is the kind of stuff they do, and then they try and go, you're a racist because you don't want this. You know what? I think not you, Perch. I think you're a racist, Netflix and Amazon. Why don't you find the stories they wrote in Africa, the stories my people wrote in Mexico and our Arab countries, and go mine that and make shows out of it instead of taking a British guy with his Lord of the Rings, and it's about ancient European history in a metaphorical way. It was how he was dealing with the trauma of World War I. Why don't you go mine up 1,001 Nights? Make a show on that and hire all Arab actors. Why don't you delve into Dia de los Muertos and make a show and have it starring all kinds of Mexicans? Why don't you look into African art and history and make a show with black people? No one has a problem with that. But when you do stuff like this, the Ghost of Kiev, and you make it a black woman, we know what you're doing, and it's terrible writing. It's terrible.
Well, it's sad to me because I think there are heroic stories of black women out there that
Of course there
real,
are. Of
that
course
are real,
there are.
that do not require whatever is going on there. I've traveled a lot internationally. I don't know about yourself, but I've lived overseas. I lived in Japan. I've visited nearly every continent.
It's impressive.
It's fun to travel. These, by and large, and I think the world has shifted a little bit in the last 5 years, certainly, but these aren't conversations you have in other countries. You go to Spain, this isn't the kind of thing people talk about. You may still have left-wing politics and all the rest, but it doesn't do this very bizarre stuff that we seem to be fixated on here in the U.S.
I think, honestly, the powers that be love to divide and conquer. And they get me and you pitted against each other over abortion or gay marriage or whatever the cause of the day is. So we'll be at each other's throats and not realize that they're fleecing us, and that they see all of us citizens, left wing, right wing, gay, straight, black, immigrant, whatever we are. But if we're middle class or poor, if we're not elites, we're cattle.
So how do we get around that? And by the way, this is a great conversation. I think I've certainly lots of people come into the comments. I interview creators. Also, I don't know if you know, I've interviewed many, many creators in comics, and I often get this question like, why are you interviewing these people? They hate us. They hate the fans. And the answer is, I don't know if they hate you, first off. And number two, I like to hear all points of view. I like to hear all perspectives. But the thing that kind of frustrates me a little bit when I talk to people and when this whole dialogue goes on is if you can peel out this feeling like people are pitting us against each other, most people are pretty rational. Most people do
Yes.
want to just work it out. And how do we get rid of the dialogue and because 95% of the fans coming into the comic shop do not give a shit about any of this. They want to read a good comic. And
Right.
the more we force it on them, the funny thing is they don't tend to pick a side. They tend to just close up their wallet and leave.
Right.
And that's why we're in trouble right now as an industry.
Well, you said Ron Mars outselling everything from DC because he's just riding straight down the middle adventure like I'm doing. That's how you fix it. You
Sure.
quit pushing an agenda from either side. And and if you're someone powerful in the industry, I won't name names, friend of mine who I texted about the Superman thing, you say something about it. You know, I'm a Christian and the Bible says if you have the opportunity to do good for people and you don't, that's a sin. I think if you have the power to do something good and make a difference and you choose not to, that is evil. If you are powerless to watch something terrible happen and it happens, well, then that's not your fault.
So I like that you're saying this, by the way, because I'll put you on the spot a little bit, but I think we agree very strongly on this topic. I've had people, my perspective on a lot of this has been, we got to get to the leadership are
Right.
ultimately the people who hold the responsibility. They're the ones whose badge is on the table in this case.
Right.
And yet 99% of the fights and things that go on between the fans and the creators and other things, they're happening between freelancers. They're happening between fans. They're happening in many cases between people who have no real power in this situation. They're making lots of noise. And certainly they're putting out stories or putting out tweets and they're antagonizing. No doubt about it. But why do the leaders of these groups tend to avoid the scrutiny? Why isn't there the same volume at Marvel and DC to get the house in order, which comes from leadership? Why don't people do that?
Because Hollywood is very, very biased to the left, and it's politically correct to be that way. The far left, not the normal, good Democrat citizens of this country. I believe they totally are here and exist. This wokester stuff to the far left, it's like 1% of the population, and I wouldn't even consider them left. They're just crazy. But the reason the leadership doesn't say it is they will get canned. They will get fired.
Why don't we? Why don't the people who are frustrated with these comics and things? Why do they spend their times going after, say, a Mags or a Vita, and not a Joe Quesada and a Jim Lee?
Well, I think Joe and Jim won't respond. I text Jim Lee personally when all this
on the inside as a creator, for sure.
Yeah. I think if you, as the public, as the fans, go after them and tell them or ask them or even politely, like, "Hey, man, I don't really like this. Is weird," they won't answer you because and my guess, this is a guess, is the benefits and the paychecks are pretty awesome being a vice president for Warner Brothers.
Absolutely.
You don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't want to stand up to woke because you don't want to lose it. And to me, that's a matter of character. And I don't mean to be mean to Jim Lee. He's the one that hired me. He's my favorite artist that I fell in love with his art when I was 12.
He's a legend in this business. Yeah,
he's the one that directed.
Joe Quesada, for that matter.
Yeah. But Jim Lee is the one I saw X-Men #1 at my friend Sean Bandy's house when I was 12, and that inspired me to get into this business.
Millions of copies sold.
And he hired me personally, not DC. He did when I was 29 years old. My dream came true. I worked in Wildstorm, saw him, went out to lunch with him. He gave me his baseball tickets. He's my friend. I have his phone number right here. I'd call him right now. Now.
We can make this interview really interesting. No. I'm joking.
But what I'm saying is, I just think that it comes down to a matter of character. And do you say, do I want the giant salary being a VP, or do I want to stand up for this cause? And I think it's very easy to keep your head down. Listen, I'm not judging him. I kept my head down after Trump won, and they just attacked me and attacked me and attacked me. They didn't know they were attacking me. But when you call people who voted for Trump a Nazi, you say we're white supremacists, you say we're all bigots. First of all, it's not true. But you have to hear that all the time. And I will say that I was cowardly in my actions to just keep working there and take a paycheck when I disagreed with what they were doing. I thought it was insulting to the art form. And then just to take their abuse, and then they didn't know they were abusing me. But even if they weren't abusing me and I was on their side, they were still abusing customers.
Why do you call that cowardly? I think
because I should have just trusted God. I should have just said, God, you're my source, not DC Comics.
Sure.
I did it. And my life is better than ever. My health, my relationship with my wife, my children, my parents. I reconcile with my father. My parents got divorced when I was 8. I go see my dad and hang out with him now a bunch. Everything is better because like Indiana Jones, I stepped into that chasm with the invisible rock bridge. I said, okay, I'm going to walk away from 20 years. I made 6 figures every year till COVID hit, working in the mainstream, coloring comics. I really did. I'm not kidding. I walked away from a cushy job where I could have just stayed at DC for another 20 years. They're not going anywhere because the money that Warner Brothers all that has, they probably won't go anywhere if I had to guess. I could have just stayed there the rest of my life, compromised everything I believed in, and then just been I would have regretted it as an old man. I would have been so ashamed of myself. So I stood on principle and said, okay, God, I'm going to step out. Don't let me fall. And I was lifted higher than ever.
I think that's two things. I think when you're in the job, it's right to be professional in the job.
And I did beautiful.
Yeah. But it's also right that if you're not happy with something, you make your own plans. I think those are two separate things. Sure. I wouldn't call it cowardly to do your job professionally. I think that's the right thing to do. I think if you're miserable, you make plans to leave. And you did.
Sure.
So,
yeah, well, I'll show you this real quick. Let me find it. Pop some more art on the screen. This never got published because, I left. But this is that son of, oh, dang it, I didn't open it. I just did a preview on the Mac. So give me one more second. This stuff never got published because, they don't want me to work on it. So they had someone else color it and finish up my work. And, but I did it. And, they want to say, oh, you hated us or whatever and this and that. I did gorgeous work, though. I mean, this is gorgeous work on Tom Taylor's Woke Superman. And I'll stand behind this work. This is absolutely superb, gorgeous comic artwork. I know it is. Mm-hmm. I did a fine job on this. That famous image, this image went around the world. I did that at my Muslim father's house. I was doing that work. I was staying with my dad for 3 weeks in September just to visit him. And I colored this issue in his house, a lot of it. And I never finished it. They didn't want me to finish it. But, I did. I think that's spectacularly rendered. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was able to be completely professional with them and work on this stuff when they want to dump the American way. And again, that's just egregious to me. My dad escaped a murdering dictator to come here. My grandfather fought in the Pacific in World War II and watched his friends' guts spill all over their knees. My grandpa wouldn't talk about the war in the Pacific. Anyone in the audience listening who knows about it, it's one of the most savage things. I mean, obviously the European theater was terrible too, but the Pacific was just endless horror.
Absolutely.
My grandfather, he told me one story. That's the only one he told me that I remember. Is a building got shelled on some island in the Pacific, and everyone died almost, except for my grandpa and a couple other people. And the Japanese soldiers advanced on them and were stabbing people with bayonets or swords who weren't dead yet. So my grandpa just totally acted like he was dead and hid under some rubble or something. And people were walking right by him. That's the only thing he ever told me. So I'm going to go in there and say it's cool to get rid of the American way. Is that who I'm going to be? And then I'm going to live with that the rest of my life. And you can laugh and say I'm pro-clutching and being too serious, but these things matter to me because when I hear about Libya and I hear what my dad's buddy Sharif, him and his friends would have secret meetings against Gaddafi, plotting against him when they were in college. Secret police, 3 a.m, take Sharif away. Next day, he's on his parents' doorstep in a bag chopped to pieces. So that's why the American way matters. Because I'm here.
I think
Dad didn't want to be there.
It's right, and I hear you. My grandfather served in the Navy in World War II. Definitely was in the Pacific Theater, and was in at Pearl Harbor during that event. Thankfully survived, or I wouldn't be here. But it was. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of horror involved in there, and there's a lot of people who feel very strongly about the country as a result. As I said, it's funny. The more I traveled around the world, the more patriotic I became as an American, because you do see things and you realize kind of what you got here. I have this quiet belief in my head that a lot of the people who are very anti-American haven't traveled very much. And the more you travel, the more you kind of realize. But anyway, that's maybe a cliche point. I think it's a struggle here because you should obviously stick up for your beliefs. Absolutely. Ideally, you do it in your work, which you're doing now with the comic you're putting out. That seems to me like a good outcome. You're not, you spoke your concerns. It clearly was going to continue to go in a different direction.
Right. You're
doing your own comic. It feels like that's pretty simple.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I don't go on Twitter and fight or anything like that. I don't do it. I'm passionate here and talking about some negative issues, but it's because that's what we were going to talk about today.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to roll around in the dog poop with these people and fight with them. They'll come to their senses.
I wish more people would stop. There's people who are fight. That's the problem.
This is the only time I would fight on Twitter and all that. If they went after me in a serious way, I would defend myself. I believe in self-defense. It's a moral right of human beings. So when they call Ethan Van Sciver a white supremacist, he has to fight back. He cannot let that stand. He can't just, oh, they called him that, water off a duck's back. No, that's defaming him. He has to fight back because as white people, I'm not white, so I don't know the experience, but I can see from the outside, that is an ugly stain that is hard to get off.
Absolutely. It
that
is.
Accusation. I can call you a white supremacist, and confirmation bias because of our stupid culture that says white people are evil, the stupid media culture we have, it's easy for me to call you that and have it stick. He has to fight back.
It's a never-ending war, though, isn't it? I mean, by the way, I agree. You can't say nothing.
Right.
But I'm a person who likes to deal in consequences, results. I'm a pragmatic in the sense that things need to lead somewhere. The challenge I have right now is none of this is leading anywhere. It's just forever.
Oh, the fighting? Yeah. I think the fighting is useless if it's for the sake of a sick burn on Twitter and all that fighting. But again, if someone comes after you and Perch is a white supremacist because XYZ,
but
you got to say something to diffuse that.
You do, but there's not a end. The problem is the people who are coming at you in this case, in this scenario, people who are coming at me, there is no lose game for them. It's just continual. There's no way you defend yourself and then you achieve a resolution. People just crawl under the woodwork. They wait a couple of weeks. They do it again because they have there's no stakes in the game. They just do it forever.
Right.
And that's the part that kind of frankly is the depressing aspect to all this, is that you're not fighting people who are in a conflict with a win-lose scenario. You're fighting people who are going to do it forever because they don't inherently care about the end result. They're in it for just the war.
Yeah, I think they are, and it reminds me very much of like middle school Mean Girl kind of stuff, where it's
absolutely.
all about, oh, we're all going to sit at this table and not let you sit at that table, and it's just kind of like, okay, go ahead, I quit, I resigned DC Comics. The punchline there was, I talked to my dad and I said, Dad, I don't agree with what they've been doing for years, and it's just getting worse and worse. What do I do? And he said, well, you have a contract, you can't quit, that's low class. He said, tell them you'll quit your contract and you have new opportunities. So that's what I did. And they all praised me. I could show you the emails. Generally, 14 years freelancer and you worked in the studio all those years. We love you. Thank you. So many late nights, valuable contributions. Everyone heaping praise. Then I go on Ethan's show the next night and we're talking about the new direction of Superman, where they think they're going to pull a fast one. The Superman's going to go away to that other dimension or far space, and then the new Superman comes to Earth and he's all woke and un-American or whatever, and postmodern at least, maybe not un-American, but definitely postmodern. And like, you think we're stupid? You think we don't see you replacing Superman with woke Superman? Like, we're not dumb, okay? And I just didn't want to be a part of it, so I said so on Ethan's show, and I said it with some panache and some flair. I think my quote was, "I'm tired of this shit." So the next day, the editor-in-chief, Marie Javins, just told me, quit working on it. I told her, no, it's against California law to discriminate against me for political speech or affiliation. I already knew the law and signed it and sent it to her. So she got scared and she didn't write me back. And the lawyer wrote me back. We went back and forth. We argued a bit. And then they decided to pay me out on the contract. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, free money and I don't have to work. Good. I'll just move on to my own stuff. So, but I was fully intending to honor this contract. I'd still be working there and Comicsgate stuff full time. And I was willing to do that. And I wanted to do it to make a point to say, see, I can tolerate you and your beliefs and work on your stuff like a pro and get you some more sales and some more Eisners, like the 2017 Batman annual that won an Eisner that I worked on. I can keep doing good work for you and listen to your nonsense politics, and you can't hear a word of mine. You're the bigot, is what I wanted to prove to them. They didn't want anything to do with it, and I don't blame them. Whatever. They didn't want to be shown up like that. So I don't think go ahead. Sorry.
Well, 3 years. I mean, so here's the 3 to 4 years from now, what are the odds these people are still working there? And we haven't had a universe level reboot, and we're just this cycle just spins around again.
I don't know. I feel like woke might go away culturally. I'm hopeful. I really am. I think the Jack Reacher thing. I think the Spider-Man thing. And
history shows us it would. Again, if you go back, history shows us these cyclical
motions. Right. But follow me on this.
Likely it will.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about the cyclical thing. And there's one more dimension to it. Okay, when someone has a horrible relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And it's so terrible. Some people get rid of everything. Like, oh, I'm going to throw his sweater out. I'm going to cut him out of pictures. I'm going to delete his number and block him everywhere and just like erase all memory of him, like Stalin airbrushing people out of photos. You know what I mean? And they erase it all. And I think the pandemic and the lockdowns and the death and the financial ruin and so much of the last 3 years of this pandemic stuff is so traumatic, like a bad relationship, that now that it is ending, thank God, I think people want to wash away every single thing that reminds them of this time. And woke and authoritarianism wokeness was in turbo overdrive during the pandemic. And I think it will start to get washed away. And more people are going to be like me and tell these wokesters, and not left wing. Left wing people are fine. I mean, the wokesters, the crazy 1%. We all going to do what I did and turn to them and go, shut up. That's enough out of you. We're so tired of you. I think it's going to happen in mass. I think people are tired of it. And if you think I'm wrong and these woke are unstoppable, I would challenge you with this. Look at the summer of love and the hippies of the late 60s and early 70s. Those same people were Wall Street investor yuppies 15 years later. So
everybody wants to believe that the era they're currently living in is wholly unique, never happened before. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. That's why I look at all this stuff, maybe people say with a middle of the road or fence sitting type approach. It's not fence sitting, it's history. History shows us that this stuff turns around. I've lived through this enough. It's hard for me. To me, it feels like a distraction. Getting too agitated about this feels like something that's going to keep people from actually getting to this next state. And I'm very anxious for this next state to occur. So I'm glad you're doing your comic. I mean, there's kind of two roads you had here. You could have gone and become a Twitter pundit, or you could do a comic. So it's good that you're doing a comic. Well,
thank you. And I'm doing a great comic that you said is like that classic stuff. And that's our goal.
Well, I need to read it, but I mean, certainly all the hype. I mean, it feels like how they promoted and marketed comics then. And I wish you a lot of success with it for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, this is our love letter to comics, Dave and I, we're the two creators. And this is our love letter to what we love about this pop culture stuff. I'm a fanatic for Van Damme and Steven Seagal and Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin and all of that action adventure stuff. And I don't have a problem with gay people or black people or Mexican people like myself or immigrants like my father. I don't have a problem with minorities at all. I am one. That's stupid. Okay.
I'm hoping, here's my maybe naive hope, and I recognize it's maybe naive. I'm hoping that, in a year or 2 years, you come back on, we do another interview because you got another book coming out. And we're not talking about anything at all. We're talking about the book because there's no point to talking about it. We're just not comics. I think, and I'm glad you asked to come on. I'm glad that we got to hear. I'm glad you got to tell your story because I think it's good for people to hear it. And that's kind of what I hope to do here. I want people to just come on and tell us what's on their mind. Tell every side, wherever side you're coming on. I just hope we're vectoring to a place where the art and the comic and the story is where it's headed.
That's what it's all about. Entertainment. Yeah. Oh, and I think that's why people get on your case and call you a fence sitter, because they want you to be animated and angry like them.
Sure, absolutely.
And I would tell them,
it's entertainment right now.
Yeah, and I would tell them, no, Perch is right. We need to do what he says, and what I'm doing is I don't go on Twitter and fight. I don't say all this stuff on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I don't go crazy. I don't talk to the names that we all know that fight and interact. I will defend myself if I have to, but I haven't been attacked that way, so I haven't done it. I got into something once, like 3-4 months ago, and the next day I said, no, Gabe, don't do this. And I deleted the tweets. They were mean, insulting tweets. Right. And I deleted them and said, no, I'm not going to become that person because I've never been that person online. So I'm standing on conviction. I sacrificed a high-paying, cushy job I could have stayed at the rest of my life for what I believe in. And I believe in art. Art is sacred. And
I appreciate you putting all it out. I do. You know what? I feel stupid for not asking you the question before now.
Go ahead.
Is this comic? How many are we getting out of it? This is the first issue. Is this the first of many? If it does well, I mean, you've already blown through your initial goal. Yeah. Congratulations on that, by the way. But what's next? Is it this? Is there more? Are you setting up a universe here? What are you doing?
This is to be grandiose. To be grandiose, Dave Williams and I want to be Stan Lee or Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. We want a whole universe of these characters and more. I told you, this is our love letter to comics. If they want to destroy the Marvel and DC universes, we'll replace it with a better one. The market won't put up with a vacuum. The vacuum is being filled. It's being filled by me. And we're going to make enough money to hire other writers to write books of our characters. And we have all kinds of characters, huge intergalactic. We have a whole thing. Good. So you're getting in on the ground floor of a new superhero universe. That's what we want to do. One of my heroes in art is Walt Disney. Just a guy from Marceline, Kansas or Missouri or whatever.
The communist, yeah.
Right.
No, I'm joking.
And then you go to Disneyland or Disney World, and you're just looking up, and you're in a pirate cove, you're in a haunted house, you're at the Epcot Center, and I went with my wife to Disney World. I've never been to the South before in my life. I live in San Diego. I grew up in Colorado, or I was born in Colorado. I've been in the American Southwest my whole life. And when the pilots were canceling all the flights in October and November, I got scared of our flight getting canceled for our 25th wedding anniversary. So I said to my wife, let's make a trip out of it. We drove from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, and we stopped in Texas. We stopped in New Orleans, had the beignets in the French Quarter. And the last night we were in Disney World. We went to Disney World for 4 days. I was standing under the Epcot Ball, and it's the 50th anniversary of Disney World in 2021. And it was really romantic. Me and my wife, we had just such a splendid trip. And I was getting misty. My eyes were getting a little teary looking up at this ball, and there's rainbow lights all over it and music for the 50th anniversary. It's at nighttime, and the weather's still perfect, even though it was mid-November. And it was a great memory for me and my wife, and I thought, I'll never forget this moment in my life. But then I thought about Walt Disney and how he was just a man who had like a poor father. He didn't come from money. And I said, anything is possible. Look at this freaking golf ball. This building looks like a golf ball, and his worldwide brand of entertainment that, there's woke garbage going on now, but Disney has done so much good for so many people for so many years with inspiring stories and beautiful art. Just the beauty of art itself is good for our souls, just to look at beauty. It's just good for us to look at beauty.
Sure, absolutely.
And when I look at Walt Disney, I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to get rich. I'm going to build my own theme parks. I'm going to just keep doing everything I can to inspire people forever. So that's the goal now. I don't want to work for DC. I don't want to work for Marvel. I don't want to work for them. If I work for them, it's because they invite me to go dabble in there and tell a Batman story I want to tell or something when they finally quit being woke in 3, 4, 5 years. I would entertain things like that. But as far as working in comics, it's like a drug. I don't do drugs, so it's probably a bad metaphor for me. I don't know what it's like to do drugs, but I'm addicted to being an independent comic artist now. This is amazing. All day, every day, I'm like 5-year-old Gabe in the back of his grandparents' Mexican restaurant drawing on butcher paper where it all started, drawing Star Wars space battles, 4 or 5 years old. No editor, no audience, no nothing, just me and God and art and the love of art. God put that in me so hard, it's insane. I love art as much as you can love something that isn't a human being. I love it for the sake of art. I love it. I love to make it. I love to look at it. It means so much to me. And making it now with complete, creative freedom that we have now. When Dave and I are designing characters, superpowers, costumes, whatever, it's all based on one question. What do you like to draw? That's it. If we don't like to draw it or write about it, we're not doing it. And that's true creativity. That's when an artist will just explode. I've never done art that's better than this. And I did Eisner-winning art at DC. But this is how you make art. So I would encourage anyone out there to do independent. They don't pay that much at Marvel and DC anyway, unless you're on a top book getting royalties, and then it's the royalties making you the money. Yeah. So I would encourage you, the internet has democratized all of this. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they make it so you can reach your audience and sell your books. It's amazing. So that's
Stop
the future.
On Twitter, make your book.
Yeah, that's the future for me. Not fighting with weirdos on Twitter and making gorgeous art that inspires people. That the point of this first Truth, Justice, American Way story is to tell people, no matter how hard your heart is broken, no matter how much despair you feel and want to quit, there's a way back, and you're going to be victorious if you just grit your teeth and get through it. This is a hard story, very entertaining, the first one, but they go through some stuff. My job as a writer is to ruin their lives and then bring them back. And it's awesome. I'm really excited about it.
Well, I'd say I'd wish you success, but again, you've already fulfilled, or you've already, you've beaten your goal.
Wish me more success.
So I'll wish you more success. I definitely, I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago. I long for the moment when we're on here talking about comics and all this other stuff. I mean, there's a reason people get after me because I don't talk SJW woke a lot on my channel.
Right.
I'm to be honest, I'm sick of it. So I'm hoping everybody else gets sick of it soon as well.
Oh, please.
And we all move past all this stuff.
Please.
It's the cancer.
Yeah.
Lovely. All that stuff is the cancer. It's keeping people from making their books. I'm really glad you made your book.
Thank you so much. I'm very proud of it. And it's just the beginning. You know, when Dave and I are on the phone breaking story and designing characters, you know, we don't mention politics. We talk story, we argue story, and like, oh, I think this should happen. I think this should happen in Act 2. Wouldn't this be a good twist at the end of Act 2? We never say, wouldn't this be cool identity politics? And by the way, David, the illustrator, he's black. He's married to a Mexican lady. Mm-hmm. I'm Arab, Turkish, Syrian, Jew, Native American, Mexican. And this is why identity politics are stupid to people like me. Which of these hands is the Mexican one and which is the Libyan one?
Sure.
There's no such thing as this stuff. Sure. I am not that racial identity. I am my actions. That's what you can call me, what I choose to do based off of what I believe. You can't just say, oh, he's gay, so he's like every other gay guy. That's bigoted. Identity politics, they're not creative, they're not intelligent. They're very bad artistically.
I'm glad you made your book. I'm glad you made it. Because again, I want to, I'm just repeating myself at this point. You want to go into a comic shop. You've got the big two pumping out 160 plus books. Image is in those close to 80 as well. It's 240 odd books from 3 publishers.
All right.
Can't there just be a reliable source of just some superhero entertainment books? And in fairness, there need to be a lot more. So I'm glad to see yours join that pile. And again, I wish you tons of success. I also want to thank you for reaching out and got to have this conversation together. It's good.
Well, I heard you were an influential and thoughtful guy. I heard that you were thoughtful, so I liked that. Well, I didn't want to come on here with someone who was going to be hostile and just, oh, aren't you a white supremacist? Or so it's like, oh boy, here we go. I
want people to tell their story. I think it's the viewers get kind of wrapped around, and hopefully they listen to this with an open mind. And you don't have to agree. I always told everybody, look, I'm going to bring different voices here, and I will bring left wing, right wing, no wing, and you get to hear about comics. And their perspective. And hopefully you're adult enough to take the stuff you like, discard the stuff you don't, and move on with your life.
Let me ask you this. I'll put you on the spot. Are you worried about putting a video of me up and then mainstream comic pros won't come on your channel because, they could get canceled because you talk to me?
Oh, some will. Some will definitely do that. And I don't particularly care. This channel is
good. People
misunderstand a little bit what this channel is. I'm not here to make money. If everybody gave up tomorrow, I move on. I don't care. So, when I put up Ron Mars's interview, ton of people unsubscribed, so they wouldn't support it. Very angry. How dare you have that guy on? Like, what, the guy who's been in comics for 30 years? I'm gonna have him on. Yeah. I don't care. So, you have a story to tell. You've got a book to put out. I want to hear that story. I'm sure some other people do too. So I'm happy to do the video.
All right. Well,
that's my perspective. I know that's a boring answer, but yeah.
Well, you seem, I think you said you worked in technology or computers or something.
I've worked in tech, worked in tech.
Yeah, you seem very analytical and pragmatic.
I am very pragmatic, yes.
Okay, yeah. So you're not a fence sitter. I'll tell all the listeners on it. He's not fence sitting. He's really thinking about this thoughtfully. He is. I can tell. I'm an insider. I know more than him about it, not because he's ignorant or stupid, just because I have the experience.
Maybe a little stupid. Also drunk, yeah.
No, I can tell you're very thoughtful about this.
It was easy for me to get worked up about this stuff in the 90s when the whole market collapsed.
Right.
It's 20 years later, like, look, I've seen the horror show. I've seen these things go around. It is cyclical. And that's good news and bad news. The good news is it will evolve to be better, if you will. It also means that after that, it's probably going to get shitty again. That's just, unfortunately, that's how the world works.
Well, yeah, that we go through the cycles. But my plan is independent comics, for the rest of my career. I really love the creativity and the freedom, and just working with like-minded people who don't want to be left-wing or right-wing or anything. We just want to entertain.
Sell comics. Just want to entertain. Make and sell comics. Gabe, I wish you a lot of success with this.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for all the time. Longer than usual. And sure. I hope people enjoyed this. I hope people enjoyed the talk.
All right. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.